Good morning at Viewpoint, the program of personalities, politicians, and perspective. And once again, happily, we have a man who fulfills both of those. 2 out of the 3, and that's 67%, not bad. Personality and perspective.
Yes, he does.
And
well, actually, Jim is in the same category, aren't you, Jim? He's a sweet thing.
In fact, he certainly is, as a matter of fact. Kudos. We had some young ladies over in Vinegar Hill that went to the Illinois State Basketball Championship and came home with a second, and that's pretty tall cotton.
Yes, sir.
And so congratulations to those young ladies and the coach. Thank you, sir.
Really.
And
really, you know, one thing about them is that one of the girls was on television, and she said how very amazed, proud, lucky they felt to have come in second. And you know, sometimes the kids who come in second, boys or girls, will just bemoan the fact that they weren't first. Well, how many teams in the state weren't second?
Right.
You know?
Right.
And she was proud to be second, and I say good for her.
Absolutely.
Yeah, believe it.
That's a great thing for all those kids. It's a great thing for a small community. And we all know how they pitch in and help one another over there on Vinegar Hill, so it's great for them. Let me see. Just read my notes, you know. Not only can I hear, I can't see this morning. Let's see here. Oh, yes.
This getting old as pigeon poop, isn't it, Bill?
Yeah. Those who are watching on video wonder why Judy isn't wearing the headphones and I am. Well, my hearing aids are off in Peoria. They're being fine-tuned. We also had a lot of basketball played in Lincoln last weekend. The tournament had its origins in the minds of our good departed friend John Welsh. A great idea John had, and so I want to take just a moment and tip my hat in deference to the memory of John. Great guy around here and did a lot in the sports world. Great family. But John's idea was to have a basketball tournament, and by golly, I think about every gym in the city was used to have these teams come from all over. And incidentally, it's an economic boost to a lot of places, gas stations and food places and so forth. So congratulations to them. Why don't we talk about Black History Month? And why don't you introduce this guest we have?
Well, yes, I'd like to do that. You know, we came up here through rain, hail, sleet, and snow. 5 miles uphill both ways. At any rate, we had time because I was driving kind of slowly because, you know, you don't know where the ice is going to come from. Which reminds me, I just have to, Glenn, you'll laugh at this. I was coming in last night. We'd gone to a visitation, and I was coming up on my deck just at the time, and I was looking down to see where my feet were going, and just at that time the snow on the roof let loose, and so it all went down the collar of my coat, which was kind of nice.
I heard it over at my house. It wasn't a Christian thing she said.
But it sure cooled my jets, I'll tell you.
I think the friend said, "Oh, married."
Well, be that as it may, you know, Black History Month is every February, and I just learned this morning from yours and my friend that they also celebrate that in the UK and in Canada. I didn't know that.
I learned something new, too.
Well, we're supposed to learn something every day, so we're on a roll.
Still alive.
As a matter of fact, it was started in the United Kingdom in 1967, and in Canada, they came along much later, 1995.
Well, when did it start in this country?
1929. Now, I'm not all that knowledgeable. I had to look that up.
Well,
thanks to Google.
I think you're knowledgeable because you can do Google.
Yeah, me too.
What, are you technologically impaired?
Yes, I am. Severe.
Oh, me too. Me too. And you know, my boss one time, I shouldn't even say this. I hope it doesn't get back to her. Don't tell her I said this.
Shut the mic off.
She put down as one of her goals that she'd have my cohort, who I job share with, Alice, and me, technologically ready to kill bear with a stick, and master this computer.
Right.
And I said, oh, you should never, ever hang your goals on somebody else, because you can't trust somebody else. All you can trust is you,
That's right.
And Alice did better than I did, I say, and she's 80 and I'm only 73.
Glenn,
Well-
I'm a little surprised. I'm a little surprised that Glenn says he's not really that savvy. You and I shared somewhat similar military skills in communications when, of course, he's a much younger guy than I am. He came along much later.
It was another war.
But it was interesting that we found that our technical training was in the same vein.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was in communications, and then I got into typing. Became a teletype operator in the Air Force, and got the highest clearance that you can get,
yeah.
cryptographic, and so I became a cryptographic operator, typing messages in crypto, and then interpreting them and rushing them to the commander to playing games.
I've seen you in the movies doing that. I have. Well, that's a good segue, kind of, really, into our topic for today, which is Black history. And Glenn is, of course, the pastor at Second Baptist Church here in Lincoln, and I've known him for a long time, and I dare say that Buzz was just crazy about you, because you served together on the city council, and he thought you were quite the fella. And by George, he was right.
Well, with Glenn, if it's a spade, it's a spade.
Yeah, right.
It's not a trenching tool or a shovel.
Yeah,
and you can respect that. If it comes from he'll tell you the way it is.
That's right.
You may not like it, but by God, you can take it to the bank that's the way he feels.
Oh, but what a much better way to live, really.
Yes.
And in fact, especially, Glenn, as the years go by, and if you don't say it right out, you can't remember what it was you did say, So it really is,
I know.
it urges your mind to be always truthful, right?
Well, Ben, you said you've been here 29 years, I believe. Yes,
working on my 29th year.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
And you were in the service, and you were in Europe. And I had mentioned to you this morning that I understood that in Europe, the people were much more accepting of the fact, the obvious fact, that we don't all look exactly like one another. And in Europe, you didn't find that necessarily to be true.
Yes, that's true.
Isn't
my
that-
experiences.
You see, you never really know what the truth of any matter is until you've walked in somebody else's shoes,
It's so true. You read so much that is going on, and yet you can always you can believe this, what you read or hear or see, and yet there's always another perspective, another experience that is contrary to even popular beliefs. Very much so. What looks good on one person may not look good on another person.
Well, and I always have said there are three sides to
Three?
everything. Your side, my side, and the truth. Yeah.
The right side.
There you go. Yeah. So tell us how it really is. Because I think that, although I grew up way up north,
Way up north.
so it was a little different, I think. The farther south you go, the more different it is from Minnesota,
Yes.
But I think that we're becoming much more realistic insofar as accepting the fact that we don't all look like cookie-cutter people.
Right. I agree. And you had mentioned the difference from north and then going south. Even down south here in Springfield, Lincoln, even in Illinois, which is south of Minnesota, there's a difference when you go to Memphis or Nashville or Jackson, Mississippi, or it's a whole new culture. And I was born and raised in the Midwest,
right,
Springfield, Illinois, and everything that I experienced as a child growing up, I knew nothing about discrimination, segregation. Growing up, I'm old school, as my parents were. You did what they told you,
and you respected
and did not question it.
That's right.
And if they tell you, don't go to this place and don't go to that place, you didn't question it. You just didn't go to those places.
And you didn't say why, because your dad said, because I said so.
Exactly. Exactly. So looking back now, they were protecting me from being embarrassed or humiliated or anything like that. And I didn't know that at the time. And we're talking about the 40s, you know, and the 50s back then. And it wasn't until I got out of high school, and instead of going to college, I went into the service, the Air Force. And that I actually experienced segregation, discrimination, even the name calling, using the N-word. So it's
that was common.
Yes.
It was common, sure.
And boy, that was another common thing they called black men. Boys, I don't matter how old you were. But that happened more so in your southern states than growing up here in the Midwest, where everything was a little, it wasn't overt.
Okay.
And it was more covert activities that were going on. And as a child, I didn't recognize it.
Yeah.
What state were you stationed in, Glenn?
Oh, I was stationed in California, Omaha, Nebraska, Texas, Mississippi.
He didn't fit anywhere. They just kept moving him around.
Oh, they had to.
But I say that laughingly because I was in a half a dozen different bases before they shipped me overseas.
Right.
So I always laughed. They said they couldn't put up with me anywhere. They just moved me around somewhere.
Was California more accepting than the Midwest?
Surprisingly, no.
Amazing.
No. Surprisingly, the only bad experience I had was one night I was coming back to the base, and at the bus stop where they picked up the Air Force guys to take them back, there was this restaurant, hamburger joint.
Yeah.
And I was hungry. I said, I'm going to go in here and get me a hamburger while waiting on this bus. I got a half hour. And so I go in. It's busy. It's a very busy place when I went in. And I stood there waiting in the line, and people started coming in behind me. And they started waiting on these people behind me, taking orders to go. And that's what I wanted, to go.
Yeah.
And they never did recognize me. And I've got my uniform on.
Besides.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I spoke up and I said, listen, I was before this person. You wait. I wait. I said, no, I'm not waiting. I called the police.
Did you really?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and then what happened?
And the police arrested me.
Oh, gosh.
Yes, they did.
Surely you jest.
No. I spent overnight in a jail in Fresno, California.
And the charge was being first in line, or what?
The charge was disorderly conduct.
Sure.
I see.
And trespassing.
Trespassing.
Yeah, they said that I refused to leave when they asked me to.
Who's they?
Please,
the people there I never met the owner or the manager.
But they never asked you to leave, did they?
Never did. I called the police.
Yeah. Well, that's another mistake.
It to them. They come.
Not a funny matter either.
And speak to the people. I don't know what was said.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Yeah, right.
Not a funny matter.
And I was arrested.
How embarrassing.
Oh, that was definitely.
And you were about how old? A kid?
At that 22, 21, 22.
Oh, I bet you were mortified.
And mad.
Oh.
Yeah, mad. Glenn, when you early on in your ministerial career here, at some point in time, you had indicated publicly that there was a lot of racism in Logan County.
Yeah.
How do you see our situation now as evolved during the years? In your judgment, have we gotten better about that? You had some specific things that were bothering you at that time.
Right. There was two that were outstanding. One was the police department and my allegations of targeting. And it came from firsthand experience. When I came here, I had a severely handicapped young man that he always wanted to go with me wherever I went. And so I would take him with me. This is before I moved here. I used to commute back and forth for the first year of my ministry. One Wednesday night after Bible study, we were going to move here, and so my wife said we need to, when we get to Springfield, I was living in Springfield, we need to stop at the store and get some groceries. I said, listen, since we're moving here, let's spend our money right here in Lincoln, and let's stop at the Kroger's down, the old Kroger's.
Yeah, on Woodlawn there.
There. And so when we was driving past Lincoln College, a squad car came and pulled out by the college behind me. So Donald was his name. Looked back and said, police back. He could speak. And if you listen to him, he was intelligent. You can hear what he was saying. And said, police. I said, well, don't worry about it. You know, we're not doing anything wrong. And so next thing I know, there's another squad car behind this squad car. And they're following me all the way. They're not trying to get in front of me. They're not turning on lights and nothing. They're just following me. And so I turned into the Kroger's parking lot, and then they put on their lights. And when that happened, another squad car came in from the opposite direction, from the west. Yes, from the west, and pulled in front. One pulled in behind. One pulled on my driver's side. I pulled all the way up to the front door because I got an attitude. I got mad.
I find it difficult to believe.
And rather than to stay in my car, I got out.
Naturally you did.
And people were coming in and out, and I said, well, let me raise my voice so everybody hears exactly what I'm saying. And so...
Not funny, though.
No, it wasn't. I was mad. And I asked them, the one guy who got out of the car and asked me to get back in the car, I said, I am not getting back in the car. Well, you'll be arrested. I said, come and get me. Here's my hands. I'm not getting out of the car. You should not have done what you've done. You've embarrassed me. And I have no idea why you would have me stopped for any reason. Well, make a long story short, things went on. They were shining lights in my wife's eyes, demanding driver's license from poor Donald, demanding driver's license or some form of ID. And I told this one deputy, I said, listen, if they do not stop harassing, you will arrest me because I'm going after them. I will not have anybody treat my wife or this kid this way. And he evidently got him to stop. And long story short, He said it was a courtesy stop.
Courteous to whom?
That the
By whose
reason
definition?
was because I had a light out on my license plates in the back.
Okay.
So walked around the back, the lights were on. So I beat on the trunk of my license plates to see if the short. I'm trying to believe this guy. And beat on it. Nothing happened. I kicked it. I opened the trunk. I slammed it down. Nothing happened. I said, look. And he said, I never got a ticket. I never got anything. A courtesy stop to do this. One of the gentlemen who worked for me, I told him about my experience in Lincoln. He was born and raised here in Lincoln.
Uh-huh.
He called, Pete Andrews was the mayor.
Okay, yeah.
He called Bob Patterson, who was the sheriff,
Right.
Sure.
and told him my experience. Pete Andrews called me in my office, apologized for what went on. Bob Patterson called me and said he was calling his whole fleet in. He only had 3 quad cars that night for all of Logan County, and all 3 squad cars did a courtesy stop on me.
Desperado.
When he
Jeez.
called them in, no one had a report.
Commercial.
No one had a report.
It didn't happen.
No.
Yeah.
And he made them go back and write a report in separate rooms.
That's interesting. That was small town America, a little bit of racism that raised its ugly head. And you know what? If we don't let our commercial sponsors raise their head, not ugly, just raise their head, we're going to be in deep trouble.
Please, let's do it.